I got to think out loud about what's happening in Virginia because it's really bothering me. And a lot of what I think about it is so politically incorrect. I'm almost afraid to say it out loud. People used to say America was a forgiving nation. Is that even true anymore? I mean, is it true that we are a forgiving nation, that when people apologize, when people say they've changed, when people can point to a record of 30 years and say, this is who I am, we're going to forgive them for something stupid that they did 30 years before? I mean, I think the problem that we have is that moral issues and personal issues are becoming political. They have become politicized. I mean, this is the problem we have with Me Too. Nobody thinks it's right to harass women. Nobody thinks it's right to assault women. Nobody thinks it's right to, make women's job depend on whether they do something for you or not, something sexual for you or not. Of course, all of that is wrong. But the point is, once it becomes political, all chance of any kind of justice disappears because it's just a question of whose ox gets gored, who is going to get taken down, who the media is going to go after and not go after, who we're going to forgive and who we're going to suddenly see nuances in, and who it's just black and white. That's it. Roy Moore is a terrible guy in Alabama because decades ago he went out with an underage girl, maybe. He's a bad guy. But Bob Menendez, we got to just hold our noses and vote for him because he's a Democrat in New Jersey, even though he came this close to being convicted of bribery and hanging out with underage hookers, Brett Kavanaugh is guilty without a trial, but with Justin Fairfax in Virginia, let's hear what this woman has to say. Let's find out, is she telling the truth? It suddenly becomes nuanced because Justin Fairfax is a Democrat. And, once you bring the politics into it, there's no chance of justice. There's no chance of forgiveness. Even as we're arguing, if you have to say, well, that wasn't so bad. This was bad. This is bad enough. You can't make the decision because really you're always talking about politics. I mean, these new Islamic congresswomen, we're not supposed to question their anti-Semitism. We're not supposed to talk about their aid for countries that treat women terribly, their dislike of Israel, where they have this affection for this Islamic culture that is unfree, that bans other religions. We're not supposed to question that. We're not supposed to say, oh, is that related to your Islamism? But it's fine to question a judge candidate about her Catholicism. I mean, this is this lady. I've lost her name for a minute. What is it? Naomi, give me the last name. Rao, that's it. Naomi Rao. She is of Indian descent. She's female, but it's fine to question her. Cory Booker goes after her in her confirmation hearings and basically asks her if she can serve as a judge because of her Catholic beliefs.
Are gay relationships, in your opinion, immoral?
Senator, I'm not sure, the relevance of that to,
I think relevant your opinion. If you think African-American relationships are immoral, do you think gay relationships are immoral? Do you personally believe that gay relationships?
No, I do not.
You do not believe that?
No.
Do you believe they're a sin?
Senator, my personal views on any of these subjects are things I would put to one side, and I would faithfully follow.
So you're not willing to say here that whether you believe it is sinful for two men to be married. You're not willing to comment on that?
Senator, no.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear your response.
My response is that these personal views are ones that I would put to one side. Whatever my personal views are on this subject, I would faithfully follow the precedents of the Supreme Court.
Excuse me.
So, why is that all right? Why, whenever anybody criticized Obama, it was suddenly racist because Obama's skin was brown. She is a woman. She is of Indian descent. Why isn't that racist and sexist? Of course not, because it's all politics. And once it gets to be politics, there's no way that you can get to the moral issue, the underlying moral issues involved. So in Virginia, they have this problem. And the reason it's become hilarious, well, I'll describe in a moment why it's become hilarious. Here's the hilarious thing about Virginia, okay? And it exemplifies what I'm talking about. It exemplifies how you can't make moral decisions in political situations. In Virginia, they have the Ralph Northam. Now, I think the guy should have been impeached the minute he started talking about leaving babies to die, but we don't want to talk about that because that's too complex and that makes the Democrats look too bad. So we're suddenly talking about this picture he took a racist picture. 36 years ago in his medical school yearbook, right, there's got one guy posing as a Ku Klux Klan member, one guy posing in blackface, and he said he was in the picture, then he said he wasn't in the picture, but he did play Michael Jackson, blah, 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 blah. So again, he's now got it so deep that he just looks bad for lying. Then they say, well, Justin Fairfax, he's an actual black guy. I don't think that actually is blackface. I think that's his actual face. It's hard to tell in Virginia now because apparently everybody has worn blackface. But Justin Fairfax, I think, is legitimately a black guy. But now he has this lady who says, Dr. Vanessa Tyson, and I call her Dr. Vanessa Tyson because I remember how Christine Blasey Ford was always Dr. Ford, even though she was just a PhD. Vanessa Tyson, also a PhD, a California professor. She's now told this graphic story of going to Fairfax's hotel room. This is in 2004, before he was married. They started kissing, and then he forced her to give him oral sex. And the story was, it was ugly. It was really ugly. As CNN would say, if it were a Republican, it's bad if true, right? It's bad if true. We have no idea whether it's true. It should be mentioned that Vanessa Tyson is kind of an activist on this. There's this video of her talking about her very upsetting past. Here's a little piece of that.
I was working as a survivor speaker for the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center. And, you came to town. There was a benefit for the Rape Crisis Center where you were our honored guest. And that is how we met.
We have similar stories, you and I.
Very similar stories. I'm an incest survivor. My father was convicted when I was 8 years old on 11 different counts of child molestation. The problem is that people don't want to hear the message, so we just got to get a little louder, right?
And more of us.
And there needs to be more of us.
Yeah,
build the numbers, keep the message going, do what we have to do until they start seeing us.
So Fairfax says, if this is a longer video, he says if she had had a problem with me, she would have mentioned that in the video. Obviously, that's not dispositive ever either. We don't know what the truth of the matter is. It's very hard to tell. I'm a little suspicious of it. I read her graphic description, and it was graphic and very upsetting, but I didn't necessarily think it was believable. But, again, how do I know? I wasn't there. None of us knows. But again, just to point out the disparity, obviously, with Brett Kavanaugh, he was guilty. With Brett Kavanaugh, day after day after day, the hammering of the press, believe all women, this happened to me, therefore he's guilty. All that logic has gone out the window. And here's why, okay? Because the next guy in line is Mark Herring, who is the Secretary of the Attorney General, the Attorney General. And he says, he first of all, he called on Northam to resign immediately. Oh my God, he wore blackface. That's terrible. And now there's a picture around of him showing up at a party dressed as a rapper wearing blackface. And so he's got to admit to that. So he would have to resign. Why is that a problem? The problem is the next guy in line is the Speaker of the House, Kirk Cox, and he's a Republican. Why is he a Republican? Because in his district, he tied with the Democrat around 11,000 votes. They both got exactly the same number of votes. So by law, they picked his name out of a bowl. So the next guy in line is a Republican. How much you want to bet all of those people calling for everybody to resign are suddenly going to get very quiet? Why? They're not going to lose Virginia to a Republican, no matter what they did. If they have pictures of this woman being attacked, if they have pictures of Northam doing what he did, it's just not going to matter. Suddenly, everything is going to change. The same is with Roy Moore and Bob Menendez. They were telling us anybody who even thought of voting for Roy Moore was just as bad as a child molester. You are just as bad as Roy Moore. But suddenly with Bob Menendez, it's like, just hold your nose. This is all going to disappear. I do not believe that these three guys are going to be sent out of power. And if one guy is sent out of power for doing blackface, then another guy has to be. And if we have to believe all women, then we have to believe that Justin Fairfax is guilty. I mean, they just cannot maintain their integrity in this situation and not lose the state. And they're not going to lose the state because it's politics, and it's always about politics. And the whole problem with it is all of us have done bad things. Now, that doesn't excuse a crime. If this guy actually assaulted this lady, as she says he did, that's a crime, and that's very different. But blackface 30 years ago, I was watching poor Elizabeth Warren. I'm feeling sorry for all these Democrats at this point. I was watching Elizabeth Warren And she's been caught yet again claiming to be an American Indian on an application for the bar in Texas, I think it was. And so this is back in the 80s. And it kind of undermines her idea that she was never trying to benefit from this. You know, she keeps saying, "Oh, I never benefited from this," but obviously she was trying to benefit from it, because in a psychopathic culture, in a culture where race becomes everything, where identity becomes everything, yeah, you're going to pretend to be racist you're not. You're going to have people identifying as racist they're not. You're going to have people imitating hate crimes, which happens in colleges all over the place, where there'll be a noose hung up on some guy's dorm and, "Oh yeah, I really put it there." I mean, what kind of craziness is that, where you have to make yourself a victim in order to feel good about yourself? So I think now, at this point, Elizabeth Warren ought to identify as toast, because I think she's toast when it comes to being president. I think she ought to, I'm identifying as a hot dog because I'm done. I'm cooked. But here she is apologizing. It's painful to watch. And she's still being mealy-mouthed about it.
I am sorry that I extended confusion about tribal citizenship and tribal sovereignty and for harm caused. I am also sorry for not being more mindful of this decades ago. Tribes and only tribes determine tribal citizenship. I had a good conversation with Chief Baker. He was very gracious, and we continue to talk about issues and continue to work on issues that matter deeply to Indian country, and continue to work on things that we both care a lot about. Nothing about my background ever had anything to do with any job I got in any place. It's been fully documented, and there's no evidence.
She's still being mealy-mouthed because she's saying, "I'm not a member of a tribe." She's not an Indian. She did the test. We know she has virtually no Native American blood. So it's just this kind of crazy philosophy. And that's what I'm really worried about. I'm worried about the crazy philosophy of the left. That's why I thought it was such a good moment when, in the State of the Union address, when Donald Trump called them out for their socialism, because they've been bragging about their socialism, but they do not like being called out about it. When suddenly somebody says, "Wait a minute, you said you're a socialist," they're like, "Don't call me a socialist. I'm a socialist. You can't call me a socialist when I'm a socialist. That's ridiculous." They hated it.